Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Taboo Talk on Power Plug Radio.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. I just want to let you know that you are listening to Power Plug Radio. You can find us on our web page, www.powerplugradio.com. You can also find us on the Apple Store, the Google Play Store, and also the Amazon Alexa Store. So you are listening to Taboo Talk, and I have two guests tonight. So we're like doubly fortunate. So, guest in the studio, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. This is Missy.
And guest on the phone, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, hello, this is Chris.
So Christopher is calling in from Colorado, right outside of Denver, in a little town called Littleton. So we have a cross country experience that we're getting ready to do on this topic today. And our topic that we're going to talk about today is vaccines. Yes or no? Because there's been a big controversy around vaccines for some years now. But also with the new COVID vaccine out, you're hearing a lot of people saying, I'm not doing it, I'm not getting it. So we're going to talk about it today. But this conversation is going to be a two-parter. So we're going to start the conversation tonight, and we're going to maybe finish the conversation next week, depending on how well it goes. We may have to spread it out because this is a very interesting topic. So let's start off with, I'm going to ask a question. And then after I ask the question of my two guest hosts, then I'm going to answer it myself. So, Missy, are you fully vaccinated?
No, not since the flu shot. I haven't had first shot or second shot.
Okay. But, I mean, when I say fully vaccinated, I mean as a child. Were you fully vaccinated?
Oh, yeah, as a child I was.
You were fully vaccinated. Christopher, are you fully vaccinated?
I certainly am.
You certainly are. And yes, I am fully vaccinated. My mother vaccinated me, and I do get my flu vaccine every year. And I've had my COVID vaccine. I did have the Pfizer vaccine. I know that there are people who feel a certain kind of way about the vaccine, about vaccines, period, and they definitely feel that way about the COVID vaccine. So I'm going to ask some opinions. Christopher, tell me, what is your opinion on the COVID vaccine, and are you planning on getting it when it's available for your age group?
I do plan on getting it when it's available for my age group. Although that's probably fairly far off considering what my age group actually is. But that's fine. Like, I'm not one of the people who's constantly going out and hanging out with people I don't regularly interact with, and et cetera. I'm mostly a homebody, so it's not a big deal that I don't get it right now.
Okay.
I am far on the positive side in relation to the vaccines as of this moment. I was very skeptical at first.
Okay. Why
Largely,
were you skeptical?
the main reason that I was skeptical was largely because of my mistrust of the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
Which is still a very prominent factor as to why I'm not completely 100% on it, but I will still get it. There's not really ever been a point in my life where I really placed any type of trust in the pharmaceutical industry solely because it is not there. It is there to help people, but that is a footnote. Its main purpose is to make money.
Okay. All right. So, Missy.
I shared a little of that skepticism, but mine was more in the government, mainly because when the pandemic hit, or should I say when not vaccine, but when the disease struck the United States, we were getting misinformation a lot. And then when they had a committee formed to inform the public, we were hoping to hear more from the CDC, and then it seemed like the government intervened on that too. And then when vaccines were beginning their testing, the groups it wasn't a full representation of the demographic I come from. So that also had me very concerned. And I work in the pharmaceutical industry. not in research or in, but I do work with the drugs. So I'm a pharmacy technician. So being that I work in healthcare, I saw how it impacted my patients, which at the time were majority, I would say 80 or 90% elderly. I had a lot of worries, concerns. Yes, I was skeptical, but I was also very critical about the information I was receiving. And so now I do feel similar to Christopher that when it is available to me, I would partake. And I would probably be that person that wants the lot number off of the dose that's administered to me, not just which manufacturer did I get, but I want to probably look up the pedigree of the dose that I was administered, and it might become a whole big thing, but I will eventually.
Just FYI, so when you do get the vaccine, you get the lot number. So you get the vaccine, you get, of course, the date, you get the lot number. And then you get a whole, they give you a whole packet of information to go along with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they kind of foresaw people feeling that way. I really think that they underrepresented people over the age of 65. I think that they thought it was going to be much less.
In studies when they were developing the vaccine?
No, when they decided to roll it out.
Oh, right.
Because we're seeing all over the United States where 65 plus, they out there. They're like, we want this vaccine.
Yes,
they are. But the one thing that I think that they didn't take into consideration is that you're talking about a generation that lived with disease. They grew up with chickenpox, measles, mumps, rubella. They saw people lose their legs to polio, their life to smallpox. They remember standing in lines around the building to get, their polio vaccine and things like that. So these people are like, no, look, I ain't lived this long for this to take me out, So we have a large amount of people over the age of 65 who do want it. But it's crazy because when I work in with vaccines, I'm a vaccine educator. And even though I am a vaccine educator, I still do have my skepticism when it comes to certain things. But also when they first started talking about the vaccine, being a vaccine educator and knowing that, back in the day, it took, sometimes vaccines were studied, especially vaccines who would be administered to children, were studied for 10 to 12 years.
Exactly.
So, right. So, and they did push this one out in less than a year. And so in the beginning, I was like, nah, I'm good. You can catch me with that over there, and I had a dilemma that I was struggling with because as an educator, I felt some kind of way. So how am I going to be out there educating people? Right. But if they were to ask me, well, are you going to get it? I'm not going to lie. I would have been like, well, and because I'm not going to sit up there and say, yeah, of course I'm going to get it. And it's a bold-faced lie. So I had a dilemma that I was struggling with. And, but I continued to do research. I spoke to several people. I've talked to several infectious disease doctors, several doctors that deal with vaccines, and they gave me a better explanation on how the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines were created. Mm-hmm. So once I understood that, and I understood the technology that was used, I could see where this would have been a vaccine that would not have had to go through a 10 to 12 year trial. It probably would have gone through more closely to a 3 to 4 year trial. But with the information that was given, and because the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine they're not using a part of the virus, they're using the RNA of the virus, which is like DNA. Mm-hmm. It's not as dangerous. It doesn't have anything in it that could give you the disease, but it is enough fool your body
Yeah,
into creating immune response. Then the other good thing that I felt good about was they said within days it dissipates. It's gone.
Oh.
So like once your body starts creating that immune response, the actual RNA, it dissipates, it disappears. It's like water soluble. It goes away. So that made me feel good too. You know, and I think that for me also, it helped me make that decision because, you know, people just kept dying, you know, and then once I had COVID, I was like, wow, okay, you know, I don't want anyone I know to ever get this. Then 3 months after I got it, they told me I could catch it again. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm
getting the vaccine.
I'm getting the vaccine.
Let's go do this.
Right. You know, but mistrust of the government is I'm gonna have to chime in on that one with you all too. You know, and Christopher is the youngest of the three of us. But you know, the way Christopher was raised, he knows the history, and so I could sit here. You know, the Tuskegee experiment, the Trail of Tears, and what they did with the Indians, Henrietta Lacks. You know, we could just keep going on and on and on. But we have to, and this is my opinion, we need to study and we need to know. I agree. Our government is not the most trustworthy. So what is it that makes you all say a part of it is that mistrust of the government?
The history.
A large part of, so I'm not going to lie and say that I trust the government, because I absolutely do not. But a large part of, I guess, my lack of faith in the government isn't just solely out of mistrust; it's also out of incompetence too. Like I have been witness to quite a few things that were related to the federal government, where it's just like, wow, you guys actually just don't know how to actually do anything right. You tried, and you failed.
Yeah, and they keep doing it.
Yeah, and it's
Competence.
Right. You know, I think that and I want y'all to chime on this too. You know, Missy, you brought up a really good point of how when the virus first hit, the rollout of information by our then government, our then executive branch actually was spotty. You know, it was terrible. You know, it was not something that built trust, because then as the months went on, we started hearing stories of, you know, people leaking stuff about how, you know, he knew the virus was here way before even though he told the country he didn't. Right. You know, how do you know, you mentioned it, but tell me, what were the things that made you feel wary that the last administration did? So
in the beginning, when prior to there being no counts, and we were told it's going to go away by. Yep. So that was my first timeline that I kind of hoped for. But when that time date passed and there began a body count, and then there was the monthly count, and then the weekly, and then the daily, and then the zip code in your area, this number of
right.
of contractions. So it just became so real, and the information coming from the federal government, the talking heads, was so fake. Like you could dispel it just pulling up the CDC website.
Yep.
Not even just other internet stories, but you could go and get cold hard facts from reputable sites, and it was so way off. There was no reason to trust what I was getting from the government. So that was basically it.
What about for you, Christopher?
I'm trying to think of a particular situation where things happened. I guess if we're talking about I guess if we're talking about the previous administration being Republican led, there's a plethora of things that you could mention where it was like, oh wow, they're really showing that they don't care anything about the common person. The stimulus is, well, it is now stimuluses, but they only gave one during the end of that administration, and the X amount of dollars that they gave, but the majority of the billions that went toward the quote unquote people actually went to corporations. Yeah. The ever continuing saga of the Keystone XL pipeline. Just so many things where I'm not surprised anymore about like the stance that the government and the state representatives take, but it's still disappointing to see that it's not, we're electing people that don't actually care about us. They care about the interests of the people who would pay them. Well, and honestly, the government isn't really, they can't stop it.
Zero. So I need as many people on this as possible. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded, I think in the beginning it was something like 50 organizations to start working on a vaccine. So they had to start like from the ground up. So they had to do all of the research and come up with formulas and blah, blah, blah. So he funded that. And then basically once you got through phase 1, you came and you said, here's our research. And it was looked at by some of the top doctors, and the doctors would say, this is viable, this isn't, And so then that 50 dwindled down to 20. So then here's phase 2. So he then funded he gave money for them to be able to do phase 2. So once they got through phase 2, then the ones that made it through phase 2 got the final funding for phase 3. So he did that because if the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hadn't done that, I don't know where we would be right now. But people don't trust Bill Gates.
Exactly.
People swear
that he's involved in population control.
Involved in population control, and that he's trying to kill all the black folks.
I wouldn't say he's just honed in on just black, but
it's supposed to be black folks and people in poverty.
Yes, that.
So okay, let's talk about this. How do y'all feel about that? Do y'all believe that? Do you go along with it? What do you think?
I've heard a lot about it. I didn't really focus a lot on concentrating on that because I have my own personal economy, and then this nation I live in, I have to deal with that economy first and foremost. But how he operates is kind of evident. Is a lot. There's a lot of, I guess you could say, video and speeches that he's given where he is kind of like, he has buzzwords in that gate all the time, where he's almost in the platform of speaking, saying it outright, but not really.
So, okay, I'm going to let Chris, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that, do I think Bill Gates is a good person? Yes. Like, you don't get to where Bill Gates is in life without like stepping on people, especially with the amount of money he has and what he's built Microsoft into. I'm not denying that, but he has also done a lot of good with his money, and he has given billions and billions of dollars away, especially to the foundations that he and his wife created. And he was right. He was absolutely right, saying that we weren't going to be prepared, and he definitely had his moment where he could have just straight up said, "I told you so."
Yeah, but he did.
He didn't.
Yeah.
And then like, I can't say I was like super paying attention to it either when people were just like, "Oh yeah, all these Bill Gates conspiracy things," and man, I can't stand. It was kind of like so the people who are denying climate change are saying that he has some like conspiracy out. Like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to listen to you.
So yeah, we have to look at the people who listen to the Bill Gates conspiracy. It is a lot of the anti-vaxxers, of course. It's a lot of the flat earthers, all of that stuff. But I'm gonna go back to what you were saying about the video. The videos have been disproven. A lot of those videos where they have him doing speeches, they had the video forensic scientists or whatever you call them, and they showed how those had been pieced together.
Oh, okay.
So those have been disproven. Bill and Melinda Gates, when it comes to their money, they have no children. When they died, they have left their money. They have, like, by the time they're gone, they're gonna, they'll be worth zero. Even though they're continuing to make money, they pretty much have given everything away, and they continue to give it away because he continues to make money. He's pulled himself pretty much out of Microsoft. His thing is he wants to make sure that this world is a better place. One of the things that he's been bashed about is that some of the people that he's funded, where they've gone to test their vaccines. And the big thing about that is that a lot of times they've gone to African countries to test the vaccines. But it was like the things that got mixed up. It wasn't him. He funded this company. He didn't have any say on how or where they did it. They went through whatever process they were supposed to go through, and they won a grant. Or they won the money. And once they won the money, then they were supposed to do certain things. He has since said that he's put stipulations into his awards now when it comes to testing in fields. But what we also have to realize is that folks over in Africa ain't stupid. No. A lot of them, they're willing to participants, just like there's millions of willing participants here in the United States. Yeah. But it's always twisted. I feel, in my opinion, I think that what Bill Gates did at least gave us a vaccine at the end of 2020. I don't think if he had put that money up the way he did, I don't think we would have a vaccine right now. Because
not.
Huh?
Yeah, very likely not.
Right, because even though you hear those big names, you hear Pfizer, you hear Moderna, but it's actually Pfizer and something biotech, because it was actually that smaller company that came up with a lot of it, but then they partnered with Pfizer. And will Pfizer make money off of this? Hell yeah. The government is paying. The governments all over the world are paying. Here's the sad part when it comes to the COVID vaccine right now is that the big countries are eating up this vaccine and the smaller countries can't get it. Exactly. So they're basically settling for vaccines that are like 50 and 60%
less effective.
It's efficacy rates. Right. And so, I feel, in my opinion, that the vaccine, it needs to be a little bit more fair, in the distribution of it. But as I said earlier,
why we're now seeing companies exist that are, their focus or mission is health equity.
Yes.
They're trying to take the formula of making money, from being the focus,
right,
to making it more equitable and fair globally.
And that's another thing we're going to talk about on this show. There's a difference between equity and equality.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that, but there's this great illustration that when we talk about it, I'm going to make sure it shows up on the screen, but it shows in a way that everyone can understand the difference between equity and equality. And, we can all be equal, but that still doesn't mean we're all going to get what we need. But if we're all in an equitable space, then that means we're all going to get it. And yes, we know that people of color, women, we can just keep naming them. It's not equitable. When it comes to the vaccine, we're even seeing issues all over the United States of it's not getting to the right people. We have unfortunately, here in Pinellas County, we have about 275,000 people over the age of 65. When you break that down, yes, most of them are white. Then we have the next is black, and then we have Latino and Asian, and then other. But when you look at the vaccine number of who's been vaccinated, the white is like through the roof. And so many factors factor into this for this vaccine. And people over the age of 65, like we mentioned before, they're desperate for this vaccine. I mean, and when you look at it, it's not equal whatsoever, but what's stopping them from getting it? The biggest thing that's stopping them from getting it is technology.
Exactly.
Technology is
because you have to reserve a spot to get your vaccine scheduled to receive it, and the disparities of health hinder us, and the disparities of technology is a vast difference.
It's a big
between
difference.
Our white of the same age elderly population and a person of color in that same age demographic.
Right. And when you look at it, we have so many and I'm not going to even just say people of color, but we have so many elders over the age of 85 who wouldn't know how to turn on a computer. Yes. They never really had to. By the time they retired, if they're in their late 80s, early 90s, some of them creeping towards 100, they probably ain't never touched a computer if they ain't want to. By the time they retired, computers weren't even, you know what I'm saying? They weren't even a thing. So unfortunately, we live in a technology world. And because we live in that technology world, everyone's mind thinks about technology. So they're going, we're going to do this on, online.
I want to tell you all about a place called Community Tech House here in St. Pete. I'll leave you the phone number to speak to the founder resident, because she can help your elderly family member, loved one, friend, or neighbor to get online, to understand how to make these connections, and whether they want to schedule a face-to-face doctor's appointment with their physician or schedule an appointment to get the vaccine. So here's her phone number. It's 727-253-8445, Community Tech House. She's helping your elderly understand the internet, basically.
And that's a good thing, and also, and I will have a number for this one next week when we continue our conversation. There's a group of people coming together, concerned community people. There's going to be some doctors and some nurses and things involved, but they're coming together to, one, help to vaccinate people who are sick and shut in. Because we didn't think about those people, the sick and shut in. I know I sound like I'm in church. I got to hold up my finger and everything, but the sick and shut in, we're not thinking about them. So this group will be helping to get the vaccine to the sick and shut in, and it will also be there to do the same thing that organization is doing, is to help them get registered to get that vaccine. So I will have a number, because they're actually meeting, and they'll be more solid next week. So I probably will have a number to be able to contact, because we need organizations like these to help our elderly to get there. I mean, I bet you that, my grandmother don't even have if I ask her right now, hey Nana, what's your PIN number for your ATM for your credit, your debit card? She gonna look at me like, what? I mean, because she goes to my grandmother, his great grandmother, goes to the bank once a month to pull out, as she puts it, cash money. Okay, and she puts it in her, because she doesn't go to an ATM. She goes to the bank. When Miss Betty walk in the bank, they know Miss Betty, and she pulls out her cash, because she doesn't do ATMs. My grandfather, they don't do ATMs. No, they still write checks. I don't even have a checkbook. Right. It's but we have to.
They're not trying.
Yeah, they're not trying. But unfortunately, everything when it comes to
this part,
everything when it comes to the vaccine is technology based, and it's unfortunate, especially when you look at the fact that the number of people of color who are dying from COVID.
Yes, the rate is alarming.
It's very alarming, and in the beginning, I don't know if y'all remember this, but when COVID first came out, the early part of 2020, it was the whole thing about, black people ain't getting it. It's something about our blood. It's something about our genes. Y'all remember that?
About 3 weeks.
And then it all got shut down because stories started coming out, and, and people were like, then why are black people getting it? Why are black people dying from it? And it was so many reasons. And one of the reasons that really hit me was an article that came out of Milwaukee. And the article talked about how they were able to trace it. And it started in the white upper middle class to elite families. But the reason why it ended up into the people, the colored communities, was because the people who worked for them, who could not isolate, because see, they could isolate in their houses, but their maids, their yard people, all those people, they were still going to work. But guess what? They were going home to their neighborhoods. And they didn't realize, and we didn't know, we were just hearing about asymptomatic.
Right.
So it was spreading like wildfire. And then, so here you go, those people who couldn't take off from work, they're still going to work. They catch it from the people who, you know, they work for, who probably was like, deuces, we getting ready to go to our island, you know, and then they bring it back to their community. And then they bring it back to the community that has what? High blood pressure.
Yeah, already pre-existing.
Right. Diabetes. Yeah. You know,
respiratory
issues, obesity, you know, and so it was taking black folks out, you know, but it goes back to what you spoke about, health equity. Yes. But I feel that
I want to see that illustration, the equity versus
remind me, I'll send it to you. It's really good. It's a very simple illustration, but it's really good and it makes you understand. So remind me and I'll send it to you. I got it in one of my equity trainings that I attended. But you know, when it comes to the vaccine, it's I believe that the new administration is trying to fix some of the fuck ups of the last administration, basically. But it's going to take time. We hit a 500,000 people dead in the United States.
Yep.
500,000 people. I mean, look at that. So you're talking
that like Sunday. I think we hit that Sunday.
Yep. And then Biden, and they did they did the moment of, you know, in the Biden administration, you know, they did a moment of silence. The Trump administration couldn't even do that, you know, but they did a moment of silence. You know, he gave that speech, which I didn't listen that day, but I listened to it a couple of days later. And, you know, Biden has suffered. You know, he lost his wife and his daughter in a horrendous car accident. And then he turned around and he lost his son to brain cancer. So he knows what it feels to lose people who you can be with and who you can't be with, you know, and I think he has
true empathy.
I do. Yes. Yeah. Very true. But it's going to be a lot to fix. Mm-hmm. This is a vaccine that can potentially get us to a new normal. We're never going to be the way it was before. Right. The new normal.
People keep thinking that it'll go back to the way it was, and honestly, it wasn't good the way it was before. Yeah. Like, I don't want to go back to that.
I'm going to give an example though. You know, you want to know what? Not everybody, but a lot of people are wearing masks, right? Right. Guess what? Our flu rates were low this year.
Mm-hmm. Very low.
And they're contributing it to the fact that people are wearing masks. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah, okay, a mask is uncomfortable, but you know what? If I wear a mask, and that means that I don't accidentally give it to someone who's immune compromised and it could kill them, I wear the mask. That's my, you know, I wear the mask. But, you know.
But you can't breathe in a mask once you have to wear it all day.
Cut off all your air supply.
Right? It's just like, you know, just somebody, I'm just smothered and, you know, or I have asthma. I can't wear the mask. I'm going, but I know plenty of surgeons who got asthma and they're in surgery for hours with a mask on.
I think it also helped that Americans effectively learned how to wash their hands properly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, I'm hoping that I know there's going to be people who will not get the vaccine. Yeah. We know that. Yeah. I'm just hoping that we will have enough people to get the vaccine so we can have herd immunity. Yeah. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what herd immunity is, this is how I tell it when I do classes. If y'all remember Animal Kingdom, remember everybody watched The Wonderful World of Disney, and then after The Wonderful World of Disney, it was the Animal Kingdom. And I always remembered the scene of all of the adult healthy elephants, and they would create a circle, and in the middle of the circle would be the babies and the elderly, and that was that herd protecting those who were weak and could not protect themselves. Well, that's basically what herd immunity is. It means that the people who can get vaccinated so that we technically create a barrier, a health barrier that prevents the disease from moving. So if you have 100 people and 75 of them are vaccinated, then the disease is basically not going to make it through the group. But if you got 100 people and only 25 vaccinated, 75 people going to get it most likely, so we have to build herd immunity. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think they said in order to get herd immunity for COVID, we had to be at 87% vaccinated. Okay. That means 87% of the United States would have to be vaccinated. I don't know if we're going to get to that. Yeah. We may get close. But and then we have other vaccines coming out. Johnson & Johnson has gone for approval. All right. It's a 1 dose. It is created from the virus, from a dead version of the virus. I don't think AstraZeneca is going to make it. I think AstraZeneca had to pull itself off of the table for being a vaccine to consider. So let's get back a little bit on vaccines. So both of you said yes. You would get it to protect those around you and to protect yourself. And I did get it. After much conversation. But what about children? How do you feel about the vaccine in children? Because right now, this vaccine, I think, if I remember right, it's 16 years and older is where Pfizer and Moderna are. How do you feel about those who are under the age of 16 getting it?
I don't know. I haven't even considered that yet.
I don't think that should happen, simply because the reason that they stated that particular age limit is that they probably don't have enough information on the age range that is 16 and below. And honestly, it's probably going to take a while because they were mostly focused on the age group between 17 and, 70, right, which is the majority of it. But it also, that was one thing that kind of got to me, like when all this started, like people were like, oh yeah, like kids don't need to do it. They won't get it. It's like, they can still get it. It might not be as serious for them, but that means they can still transmit it to other people. Right. So like think, people, think. But if children are not allowed to have the vaccine until, further study is done and all that, the same stuff needs to be happening as is happening now, or at least is trying to happen now. Kids don't need to be in school. Right. Like, kids don't need to be doing extracurricular sports, like any of that stuff, because honestly, like, that's how it happens.
But we have parents who are pushing all over the United States for their kids to go back to school. Now there's a good argument for that, because a lot of kids are suffering from severe depression. They're suffering from anxiety. They're suffering from what's the word? Separation anxiety. They feel isolated. They're starting to see that it is wearing on young people because they don't have that interaction anymore. So they went from having friends and hanging out and to no touch. It's just everything is via camera, and I think they're starting to, the young people are starting to realize more that human interaction was more important than they thought now that they don't have it anymore. They have seen a rise in suicide with young people since COVID, and attempted suicide, because they can't handle it. So we do have to look at both sides of it. If Christopher was of school age, I probably would keep him home. but my child is also a loner. So I
That
don't.
was weird. I was in the middle. Like I was fine being by myself, but
Yeah.
I also
Yeah,
very much enjoyed hanging out with my friends. But
Right.
it wouldn't have bothered me to be at home and, like that interaction,
right.
like
But
not having it.
that social butterfly who's used to just doing everything, and then all of a sudden they're isolated to their house, which most likely means they're going to spend most of their time in their bedroom. It's mentally, that's just not, it's not doing well for adults, let alone children. So let's say we have to send our kids back, because you got to think about it. There are parents who can't afford for their kids not to be in school, because if their kids aren't in school, that means they got to be home, and they can't afford to be home. So what's the solution? My opinion, we need to vaccinate every single person who works in a school. The teachers, the cafeteria workers, the counselors, the coaches, everybody. If we're going to start sending these kids to school, then we need to vaccinate everybody. I also feel that they need to split the day up. No school is able to handle social distance with the number of kids they have. So then shorten the school day and split it up. Do 2 sessions. Do a morning session and an afternoon session. Let the kids come 2 sessions. We got to think about this, because this has to be able to work for both people. But I really think teachers need to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I am an instructor, but I've been away from the conversation because when COVID was going on and they didn't have school for that period, I wasn't a part of any of those discussions. But the split day does sound like a good solution.
Yeah,
I hope they are talking about it. So if any teachers out there want to chime in, send us some messages or update us, that'd be great.
If I can find my other phone. My phone died, y'all. Sorry. But go ahead.
I do agree that at a fundamental level and like a mental and emotional level, that school is necessary for a lot of kids. They need to be able to interact with people their own age. Like, they need to have fun, like do all of that stuff. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is that people and a lot of parents have not been properly like teaching their kids what to do once they go back.
Yeah.
Like even when they weren't in school, like wearing your mask all day, not taking it off, especially if you're around people, like things like that. And it's because of that before 2021 even started last year, before like winter break and all that, the few schools that opened around the country, I think it was maybe like under 10, all of them had major outbreaks within a week.
Yeah.
Like some of them within like 2 days.
Yeah.
And
think about it though, y'all. Come on. We can't get adults to wear a mask right. So what makes you think, a bunch of teenagers gonna wear them right? What makes you think that a boyfriend or girlfriend who ain't seen each other in a few weeks ain't gonna dip around the corner and kiss? Come on. We have to be realistic.
And that's exactly why. Like, I understand that kids need school. Like, that's not something that I am arguing against. It's just, it's not really possible without risking more people. It's gonna happen.
That's
as
true.
long as this is as serious as it has been for over a year now, it's just not really feasible to open schools again, because there will be outbreaks. It's not a matter of if. It is just a matter of when.
Well, if we know that the outbreaks are going to happen, but we vaccinate our adults, we vaccinate the teachers, the cafeteria workers, everybody, anyone and everybody. And a parent chooses to send their child back to school knowing the risk, and I'm not trying to say that a child's life is worth less, but we also know that it is possible for children to get it and to recover from it with less long symptoms, where you have teachers who are in cafeteria workers and principals and all who are 50, 60, 65, some of them beyond 65 because they have to work beyond, because they can't afford to retire, where they could get it and it could kill them. or they could get it and then they could turn around and give it to their parents. What about that 35-year-old teacher who's teaching every day, but she has to go home to her elderly mother? So I do think that if we're going to send our children back and they do need that, then we need to vaccinate our teachers, and not just the ones that's 65 plus.
True.
So what time is it? Because the show be going by quick.
They're like 10 minutes, I think.
Okay. So so let's just finish out this COVID thing. When it comes to the vaccine in children, they are in the process of testing. It probably won't be until, I think Fauci said 2022 or beyond before it'll probably get approved for people under the age of 16. But I do feel that if that is the case, then we need to look at alternatives, because the United States we don't learn lessons very well. I looked at the Super Bowl, which was here in the Tampa Bay area. So the Saturday before the Super Bowl, I was working and I went downtown to a place to get my lunch, and I saw all of the people. I was like, oh my God. It was like, that was the busiest that I had seen downtown St. Pete, like, period. I had never seen so many people in downtown St. Pete. And I politely called the restaurant and said, can you bring my food to my car? Because I wasn't getting out. It was just too, it was too many. I was like, because I hadn't done curbside, but I wasn't expecting that. Now at the actual Super Bowl, they did do the social distancing. They had to sit so many chairs apart. But the parties after, them people didn't care, especially because Tampa won. Oh, they lost their mind. They was drunk. Because the more you drink, the mass, it's like the more you drink, the lower the mass get. And so
until it's just blown in the wind.
Until it's just gone in the wind, and we all know why the Super Bowl happened. My understanding was the NFL was cool with pushing it back a few months, but certain people who I won't name here in the state of Florida wanted the money. And so, the unfortunate part is the vaccine wasn't pushed out in a manner that it should have been. It wasn't handled in a manner it should have been. Not enough doses were ordered. And then we have states that are doing things like having the Super Bowl because the money is more important than a life. And that's one of the things that I need, for me as a mother who vaccinated her child. Christopher was fully vaccinated. Christopher was fully vaccinated because I was fully vaccinated. I didn't want him to suffer from diseases. And this is, I did that, my mom did it, so I did it. My grandmother did it, so my mama did it, so I did it. Now I have a better understanding of vaccines. But would I change that decision? No, I would still do it. I have people who ask me all the time, well, is your child vaccinated? I go, my children's vaccinated and my godchildren are vaccinated. My grandchildren will be vaccinated. It's like, even my mama vaccinated, because I would call my mom and be like, you need to get the shingle shot, so.
Kids have vaccines that weren't even invented when I was a kid.
Right.
The HPV and all that.
And the chicken pox, like, look, I wished I would, they didn't have a chicken pox vaccine when we were growing up, But a vaccine that can prevent me from getting cervical cancer, but I'm too old for the vaccine. Unfortunately, it's up to the age of 45, and I'm 50. So, but if I could, yes. Would I? Yes. If I had a daughter, would I? Hell yeah. And hopefully my son and my daughter-in-law will be like, yep. But I'm gonna close it with this, and we'll finish this conversation next week. Everyone talks about the risk of vaccines. But let me say this. You take risks every time you walk out your front door. You take risks when you pop a pill in your mouth that your doctor told you to take. Pills have more side effects and more risk than a vaccine. But we choose, for some reason, to hone in on vaccines. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of vaccines, in the Black community, and the history of vaccines, period, in diseases. I want to say Thank you. To my sister from another mother. And to Missy, thank you so much for being here. I smiled when I walked through the door and saw you. And I want to say thank you to the one I gave birth to, Christopher Michael. Thank you so much for being here and spending a little bit of time with your mom and your auntie.
No problem.
From Colorado. So you all have a wonderful week. I'm going on my staycation, y'all. I'm gonna be on staycation for the next week. I'm coming back right in time for the show. So y'all enjoy yourselves. You are listening to Taboo Talk on Power Plug Radio.
You're listening to Power Plug Radio, home of your throwback jams.
So I'm thinking